Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel. Big up to everyone that's locked in over on Chelsea Fan TV, and welcome to your daily transfer update. As always, guys, on your way in, make sure you smash the likes on both streams. Make sure you subscribe to both channels if you haven't done so already. And as always, there is loads to get into, people. Chelsea considering a move for Ivan Toney. Rayan Cherki supposedly wants the Chelsea move, could cost around £50 million. Chelsea are open to the sale of Trevoh Chalobah if an acceptable offer is received. And Conor Gallagher is liked by Spurs, but could cost £50 million in this market. And also, reportedly, Chelsea only wanting £25 million for a front of shirt sponsor as well, which is kind of interesting, considering Stake were offering 40, and we're now prepared to accept 15 million less from any suitable bidders. Has it really got that desperate for us? Maybe it has. But yeah, there is loads to get into. Guys, make sure you get involved in the chat. As always, make sure you let us know where you're tuning in from around the world. But Ollie, thanks for coming as always, mate. Massively appreciated your time. What are you making of what's going on at this point in time? Because we've spoken a lot over the transfer window so far. And I think we were both in agreement that, if that's even a word, yeah, I think agreement is a word. Both in agreement that that the first part of the window, certainly June, was about. We've done an exceptional job there. I think we can all agree on that. Now, this part, build up to pre-season, etc., was about, let's try and get rid of Lukaku, Aubameyang, Ziyech, okay? And then if offers come in for Chalobah or Gallagher or whatever, fine. But the big thing was try and get Caicedo done by pre-season. That's looking less likely. And it doesn't really seem to be an awful lot of movement on too many other players. Yesterday, we had some more Cherki news, but in terms of other incomings, there's outside of the Caicedo news, which is kind of the same recycled news seemingly for the last couple of weeks. How are you feeling now that the most of the clear out's done? Are you concerned we may be getting left a little bit behind? You worry we might not be able to get some of these deals done?
Maybe, but I don't know. It's hard to say. It's clear that in some regard we're behind the eight ball for sure. I think that's because Caicedo is just taking so long to get wrapped up. I'm personally not even sure if it will get wrapped up. So, it'll look really, really bad on the owners if we don't have everything in place and ready for the start of the season. Ideally, everything needed to be done for pre-season, but for the start of the season, everything absolutely has to be ready and in place. Which will look terrible on the owners if Caicedo falls through. Because we've spent weeks on it, we've been prioritizing it, focusing on making sure we can get him to come to Chelsea. And if we can't get an agreement with Brighton in place, then it's not going to happen. And we've wasted 2 weeks because we've prioritized this. We've not focused on other things like the remaining outgoings that need to happen, sponsorship stuff, any other players' incomings, that sort of thing. So I think Caicedo is kind of holding everything up at this point. Not the man personally, just the deal. And I think that comes down to Brighton being notoriously tough negotiators, as we know.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I think a lot of us were thinking we might as well start with the Caicedo stuff. Then there is before people start asking in the chat, there is no new updates on Caicedo. Personal terms were agreed last month. That's not an issue. Reportedly, an 8-year contract has been agreed. So obviously the fee, the payment structure, the payment terms, Chelsea seems to have been locked in conversations with Brighton for a long time now. Now, people saying that, there's kind of a little bit of hypocrisy amongst the fan base in terms of, oh, we must get Caicedo, we desperately need him. Oh, actually, £100 million, oh, we better walk away. Now, I was saying to you before we started, we've almost kind of made a rod for our own back in this situation in terms of us paying £106 million for Enzo Fernandez, Declan Rice going for £105 million. Brighton have got a top class midfielder on their books. Why shouldn't they ask for £100 million? £100 million, as mad as it sounds, seems to be the going rate for top-level midfield players at this point in time in the market. So you can understand why they would ask for that money. But in a strange sense, mate, paying £100 million actually, whilst it's more than we would pay, which is more than we want to pay, rather than the 80 or 85, it actually works out better for Chelsea to pay £100 million because the payment terms would actually be better on the books because it's less money going out each year. Do you think paying £100 million, if it comes to that, is outrageous for us to do that? Or do you think we've put ourselves in a position where we're desperate for Caicedo, we've massively neglected the midfield over the years, we almost have to?
Yeah, we do almost have to. I mean, there are a few other like sort of options out there who are kind of similar, but in terms of like a high profile, big money sign in who's prem proven, all the rest of that, all the intangible stuff. He seems like the only option now to a certain degree. And like you said, I think the ownership have kind of made a rod for their own backs on this one because like I said, they've been prioritizing this so much, they can't get it done. It's gonna look really bad, just be on the fact that other things have, then been on the back burner, and those things might suffer as a result. If those things are gonna suffer, at least get Caicedo, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, none of us know a time scale for when this is going to be done or not. But you look at other midfield options in the market, and there aren't really that many. Let's just play devil's advocate here and say worst case scenario, we do not get Caicedo, which for me I think is unimaginable, unthinkable. I don't think Chelsea can allow that to happen. We have to get Caicedo. I've always said it was either him or Declan Rice this summer, that we had to get one of those. They were the two standout midfielders on the market. If we weren't to get Caicedo, that does leave us in a tricky position because Romeo Lavia, who is a player that Chelsea admire and is a player with a lot of ability, is not the same as Moises Caicedo, and he's not going to go into that Chelsea midfield, be the perfect partner for Enzo straight away and transform the midfield like we need to. And then you're looking at other names around on the market, and I'm struggling to think of many that come to mind. I mean, do you think it would be disastrous if we did miss out on Caicedo? And who are the other options out there, do you think?
It would be bad if we missed out on Caicedo. Like I said before, partially because it looks really bad on the owners. Um, I think there are a couple other options out there, but none of them are quite as sort of high profile, like I said, or even as good as Caicedo. So I don't know. The closest I've seen is this guy from the French league called Gorna Douaf, I think his name is, and he's stylistically very similar. I think he did something like 60 League One appearances last season at only 18 years old, so sort of shows his quality. Um, but again, it's not a big high profile. You could argue it's another kid. It's another youngster. It looks really bad basically if we don't get Caicedo now.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I think an agreement will be made, but I just think it's going to take a little bit longer than we think. But it's frustrating because look, I'm not saying you have to have all your signings done by the time you jet off a pre-season, but I do think you want one sort of major signing done, or your marquee signing for the summer, which I think Caicedo would be for Chelsea. You ideally want him done and on that plane, so he's got every minute of that pre-season tour in the States with Pochettino, with the squad. Because a Pochettino pre-season is going to be very different to a Roberto De Zerbi pre-season. You're going to be learning to play in a different style, a different way. You're going to be playing with different players, obviously. And, it's not beneficial. And I think we also run the risk of falling behind certain players, of certain teams. So you look at Arsenal, for example, where I know Declan Rice has not been announced, but Declan Rice is going to be on a tour. Kai Havertz is on the tour, and Jurriën Timber will be on the tour. So they're three big signings this summer, all done early. Yes, obviously the complexities of those deals are going to be different to the complexity of the Caicedo deal. I appreciate that. But all three of their major signings so far this summer are all going to be on the plane for that pre-season tour. That's massive. Spurs have got James Maddison in their kind of main signing so far. Man United have got Mountain, which is a main signing for them, whatever you think of him. Mate, do you worry that at this stage, I know this is kind of might be jumping the gun a little bit, do you worry that we could be falling behind slightly if we don't get these players in before, well, certainly for pre-season?
I think we kind of already are behind because I'm not sure we can get anyone in that between now and pre-season that isn't already in the works. I feel like we're jetting off for pre-season in what, 5 days?
Yeah, Monday.
Yeah, Monday. So it's really not that long now, and I just don't see us being able to get deals, complicated midfielder, expensive big players. I just don't see it getting over the line in time for that. So regardless of what happens now, I think we have to accept that whatever big signing we end up making isn't coming for the start of preseason because I just don't see that happening in such a short time frame.
No, I certainly would. I certainly would agree with that. Right, let's move into some more news on strikers. Now, other than that, there really isn't any more news on midfield players, guys. We'll get into the Conor Gallagher stuff a little bit later on. Let's discuss this Ivan Toney thing because I've met people that tune in regularly will know that I've mentioned this a lot of times. I did also accept that it probably wasn't going to happen the other day because I just for obvious reasons. But Felix, who obviously, let's look, fair play to him. He actually has been pretty reliable with quite a few things this summer. He's saying that Paul Winstanley is trying to push a plan and reach a consensus with other directors to move for Ivan Toney in January. Sources close to the player confirm that Winstanley has been speaking to Toney's camp since May. It's his direct plan, and Toney would be open to the move. Winstanley's trying to convince the rest of the hierarchy, but the elite striker list for this summer still remains at the three names revealed, so Vlahovic, Lautaro, and Kolo Muani. Vlahovic is liked by a different director and Poch directly. Lautaro interest cooled after Inter's asking price and bids for Lukaku. Chelsea think Inter have overvalued their players and undervalued Chelsea players. I'm told strong words were had. That bit doesn't necessarily surprise me. But this Ivan Toney stuff, mate, where do you sit on it? Because I think a lot of Chelsea fans, myself included, that would Ivan Toney would have been the number one guy for Chelsea to sign this summer. The profile works. He's Premier League proven. He's got the attributes that generally have succeeded in centre forward in the past at Chelsea. Where do you stand on this? Do you think this is getting a bit more plausible when you look at the market out there? We're playing once a week until January when the FA Cup starts. We've got we've got a few League Cup games here and there as well. I'm starting to lean more towards that. Actually, if we do want to do this, I think we could get by with Jackson and Nkunku and Broja as the three options until January, and then maybe sign Ivan Toney. I mean, do you think it's a big risk to do that?
I do. We were saying on the before the show, ironically, it's a gamble.
It is, yeah.
For Toney at this point, because and this is what I've maintained with Toney. His ban is until February, right? You can buy him in January.
Jan 24th, yeah.
Yeah, so end of January, start of February. So you're not getting him until February. You're not getting him more or less until end of February. Sorry, end of January. And then he's going to need a month to get up to speed. So you're not really going to get him in at full power until, I don't know, late February, early March. So then you've kind of gone a whole season without having a real striker up top. By then seasons probably, could well be done and dusted anyway. So... yeah, if we're willing to just kind of like pull a mulligan on the season and accept that we're not going to get anywhere this season, sure. But I'm also not that massively convinced about Toney. I think he's a decent player. I think he's a good centre forward. He's good for other players to play off of, and maybe that's what we need. But he also, he scores a lot of penalties. He doesn't create that much, which he isn't expected to as a centre forward. I get that, but I just don't see him necessarily as this kind of be-all end-all option. If anything, I kind of almost see him like coming in to be a bit like Giroud is, like Giroud was for us, like a bit of a backup striker who's reliable before we go for then maybe an actually big striker next summer. I don't know, but for me, I wouldn't personally sanction the deal just for like the reasons I've given. But I wouldn't be against it if he came.
No, I wouldn't be against it either. I just think we're in a unique situation this summer, and like where the striker market, as we've widely discussed before, is not that great. We're not getting Harry Kane, and we're not getting Victor Osimhen. That leaves you Lautaro Martinez and Dusan Vlahovic as probably the two main names on there. You could maybe add Kolo Muani to that, but I think Vlahovic and Lautaro are slightly more proven. In that sense, a bit more pedigree than Kolo Muani. Other than that, there isn't anyone. Now, we've got a deficit of best part of 30 to 40 goals to make up next season. 38 goals last year. We need 68, 78. We need 30 to 40 goals to find. Now, we either look for someone that we think can get us 20 of those goals and rely on them for a main source of goals and hope the others can maybe chip in with a few here and there, or we go down the route where we stick with what we've currently got at this point in time, and we hope that Nkunku can get 10, maybe. Maybe Sterling can add 10. Mudryk can add maybe 8 or 10. And then Jackson and Broja can get maybe 8 to 10 each as well. You try and make up the deficit that way. Look, I'm in two minds on this one. Yes, I'd love us to sign a striker, of course, but I don't want us to sign a striker for the sake of signing a striker just to appease a box that needs ticking and to sort of appease the fans. Like, I'm just not sure really on any of those three options out there. They've all got pluses and they've all got negatives, like every player. But I don't know. I just think this is I think this is a really tricky situation. I mean, if you're Chelsea, what do you think? What do you think the club should do? Because I said the market's not great, and you either try and hang your hat on someone to get you 20 goals, or you try and improve what you've got and get more people chipping in with more goals.
Yeah, I mean, like it's one or the other, isn't it? Either everyone's going to chip in a bit, or someone's going to chip in a lot. But even if you want someone like Toney in that case, he's not going to be available till February, March. So, like you're not going to get that 10 goals from unless he goes absolutely ballistic in 2 months. Like when we're playing one game a week at the end of the season, it's just not going to happen, is it? Like, and with the other striker options, yeah, there are the options like Kolo Muani and Vlahovic and who's the other one? Martinez.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure any of them are really like the best fit. No one seems to be sort of this perfect fit that we're looking for. And it makes me worry that we're going to end up splashing money on someone who actually isn't really the best choice for the position.
I would agree. I mean, I look at the three. I think we've discussed this before, mate. Kolo Muani would probably be my preference, but he's not out of those three. He's not someone you'd say is prolific. He's not an out-and-out nine either. He's one of those sort of, I guess you would say, modern-day forward players where can play down the middle, but is obviously equally comfortable playing wide as well. Vlahovic and Martinez are more of your out-and-out nines as such, but I mean, Vlahovic for me looks like he'd have more of the characteristics to succeed at Chelsea than Lautaro does. But again, if you're getting the Fiorentina Vlahovic, absolutely. But the Vlahovic you've seen at Juventus, now again, he's had injury issues. I don't think Allegri's style of play or the system at Juventus necessarily plays to his strengths, but he's not exactly pushed on from when he was tearing it up at Fiorentina. So there's question marks around him. I mean, would you feel comfortable with the club potentially spending 65, 70 million pounds on Vlahovic?
I mean, not really. Again, it's a big risk, isn't it? Like I'm not massively sold on him. For some reason, some people seem to really like him, but like you say, he hasn't really kicked on at all. I guess the Juve move wasn't the right one for him for sure, and maybe you could say we could get the best out of him or something like that. But we've heard all this before, and we've heard it all with other players before. I think we need, if we're going to go for a striker, we either go for someone who's either elite right now and is going to who's definitely going to make up that 20 goals for that 30-40 goal deficit, or we go for someone up and coming and hope they can do it in the future. Like Vlahovic is neither. So for me, that move doesn't really make all that much sense.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I'm not. It's the same thing. I'm not particularly excited about any of those moves. I'd get behind it, and I probably would be excited. When we're linked with signing him and things start, snowballing and moving at a bit of a pace. But yeah, I just see it, and I think no real names excite me in the striker market this summer that are attainable for us. Of course,
and I think it's daft as well to spend massive money again on a striker as well. Like I don't think we should be spending 100 million plus on a striker like we would be for like the likes of Osimhen, unless you're going to get someone like Harry Kane, which we're not going to get. I just don't see it happening.
No, I absolutely don't either. I mean, let's talk about the strikers that we do have on the books, mate. What are you expecting this season from the likes of Nicholas Jackson and Armando Broja? Broja back in training, great to see after that ACL injury, but we've got very little to go on from him. He had a season on loan at Southampton where he was great for half of it and poor for the second half of it. And then it hasn't played for a while. But we've seen glimpses of him at Chelsea last season. Took his goal well against Wolves. Looks like it's a good system, and there's chances being created. He could be a bit of a handful. Pace, good profile, physical. Looks like he could be a decent goal scorer. And then you've got the unknown quantity of Nicholas Jackson. I mean, how do you assess where those two are going to fit in, and how do you see them doing at this point in time?
I think it's probably going to be partially found out in preseason. Yeah. Poch is going to look at things between those two, and if he decides we need a striker, then we might go back in for one. If not, maybe we don't. But I think they'll push each other, because they'll be competing for that starting striker spot, even with Nkunku as well, who's more likely to play as a 10, sort of behind the strikers. I think what we need to see from from both of them is the drive and the passion for sure. We need to see a strong work rate, and we need to see goals, and that's it. Anything else is a massive bonus. Playmaking, whatever, doesn't matter. Just need to see goals and work rate. We just need a focal point for our attack that players can work off of. Maybe Broyer's more that than Jackson. I'm not sure. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're going to get exactly as you said. We're going to get our answers in pre-season. In terms of that one, I think with the pre-season, you're going to be looking at it and you're going to be thinking, right, first couple of games, it's probably going to be one team for one half, and another team for another half. And then I think once you get to maybe the third game, you'll start seeing the players that are probably going to form the basis of the first team playing 60 odd minutes, and then you're going to start to see who is and isn't in the plan. Certainly for the first few weeks of the season, but. Sticking with attacking options, a move for Rayan Cherki seems to be gathering a bit of momentum. Now, Julian Lorenzo is great journalist in general and with Chelsea stuff, saying that Rayan Cherki is keen to join Chelsea. Chelsea preparing an offer potentially for this week, but Lyon valuing him at around £50 million. Now, what are your thoughts on Cherki? It's clear that we do need another creative midfield / attacking player, someone that can replace Mount and Havertz, one player to replace the two of them, essentially. Someone that can play maybe as a 10 and can play as a wide player as well. Cherki certainly ticks the box in terms of ability, talent, age bracket and whatnot. Do you think a move for him makes sense, or do you think there could be better options out there to fill the void that we need?
It's a good question. I think the answer is yes to both in a sense. Like, yes, he is good, and yes, there might also be better options out there. I personally really like Cherki. He seems to be a phenomenal talent. He at 19 or 18 in the Ligue 1, he's putting up better numbers than Hazard did in Ligue 1 at the same age. With fewer minutes as well. So. Obviously we all know Hazard went on to be absolutely crazy and do really good, but we signed him when he was 21, 21, 22, and we'd be signing Cherki much earlier than that.
Yeah, 90, so, 20 till August.
Yeah, so there's still that question of like, how mature is he? Is he willing to mature a bit more in his game as well? We know he's not very strong sort of in the defensive actions of his game. That's not his strength. That's fine. But I think he also needs to work hard, and he needs to prove to Poch that he deserves to play and start, because otherwise, if he's not willing to put the work in, there's no point buying him anyway. I know a lot of people are saying he's a phenomenal talent, and we can't afford to miss out on him. And while that is true, I think it's also important to recognize that if he's not going to work with Poch and he's not going to work in Poch's system, it's just not going to work from day one. And so then we're just throwing good money after bad again. So what needs to happen is if he wants to come here, we need to buy him firstly. He also needs to work with Pochettino to make sure that they get both the best out of his game and also what's best for the team as well. So, and if that all can happen, it could be really magical and it could go really well. But that's a lot of big ifs, and there's a lot of questions between now and that point.
I mean, do you think 50 million quid? I mean, the market is ridiculous in football these days, but do you think 50 million quid for a 19-year-old is an extortionate amount of money to spend? I suppose you're not paying for what he is right now. You're paying for the potential, which is very high.
If you're good enough, you're old enough, right? Like, he's gone through and he's done really well in the under 21s Euros. I feel like at this point, there's no point talking about money. Like Caicedo's 21 and we're going to, potentially drop 100 million on him.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I know those extra couple years do make a big difference, but at the same time, I don't know. It just seems to me that this kind of kid is kind of worth going for. I've not seen it specifically as high as 50 million. I've seen 40 million euros or 35 to 40 million euros, which I don't know, to me seems like a pittance.
Yeah, I think it would be a good deal. I mean, would you say he's top of the list of those targets for that position? Obviously, we've had links with Paulo Dybala. We've had Thiago Silva speaking to him at the F1 at Silverstone. Enzo Fernandez saying he's been in contact with him. I think Dybala, gets on well with Mourinho. He's only been at Roma for 1 year. I think that's a bit more of a pipe dream than a serious reality. Obviously, never say never in football, but I mean, the Gabri Vega stuff seems to have gone a little bit quiet as well. It seems like Cherki seems to be more at the front of the queue now than Vega. But I mean, do you think? I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but do you think Dybala would be a good fit at Chelsea?
Yeah, actually, I do. I mean, again, it seems that they want a very specific profile because I'm not sure Dybala's too strong on kind of the defensive side of things either. But
No.
he kind of represents a similar profile to Cherki, and he also represents sort of someone who's going to be that creative outlet, not dissimilar to Nkunku at the same time. Someone who can kind of play on across the sort of the three that are going to sit behind the striker. At least what we think is going to happen in Poch's system. So. Yeah, could work. Like, I wouldn't be against the signing at all. A bit more experience up top. I'd appreciate that, especially because we're getting so many, young kids at the moment. And for 10 million, it'd be hard to. Yeah, I think it'd be hard for us not to at least go for it because that really is nothing in today's market. I think we just bought a 17-year-old kid or something from Everton for like 5 million or
4 million quid.
4
Yeah.
million quid. So, it really is spit in the ocean compared to like what some of these players are going for now. So, but I think I'd like Cherki a little bit more than Dybala, but I'd be happy with either. At least for the next season.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people talking about, we should go back for Felix in the chat. Guys, Felix is not happening. There's a reason why Poch didn't want him. It's not because he's not good. But
it is because he's not good.
Well, possibly that, but also the fact that like the money is ridiculous for him as well.
100 million for what, like 2 assists and a couple red cards?
Yeah, I look, Felix is not happening. I don't think. I also don't think that there's room for 2 big. I'm not saying Nkunku's a big ego, but 2 big players in that 10 position like Felix and Nkunku. Yes, you want quality and strength in depth, and of course, but I actually think it's better balanced to go with someone like a Cherki or a Vega or whatever it might be, rather than bringing Felix back. And there's a reason the Felix decision has been taken, because ultimately Pochettino doesn't see value in that.
And we've got Nkunku. Like you say, you don't need competition for places at that level in that position. And Nkunku's going to play across the sort of the front line. Maybe as the striker, very very similar position to someone like Felix. And if you get in someone like Cherki, he's more likely going to fill in sort of behind the striker, a bit more like Nkunku will, and on the right-hand side behind Madueke, where there's a little bit, I don't know, it just seems a bit more of a stylistic fit, especially with having a younger player deputizing under an older one, under a more senior one.
Makes a bit more sense, doesn't it, really? But yeah, look, I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. And again, guys, look, I think realistically, we're going to be looking at, I would be shocked if we had any serious news on incomings before we jet off to pre-season. I can't see anything massive happening in the next 5 days in terms of incomings. That this is just a hunch, could be totally wrong. Could get a here we go for Caicedo tomorrow. Like you just never know. But I look at this now and I just think, yeah, we probably aren't going to be getting much news on incomings before we jet off for pre-season. I think that's just the reality of the situation. Yes, it's frustrating and whatnot, but it kind of is what it is at this point in time. Leon obviously don't want to sell Cherki, but Leon have got big financial issues. So a 40 odd million pounds would be a good deal. Would be money they would absolutely accept. So yeah, let's wait and see what happens on that front. Mate, I wanted to quickly talk about before we get more into the players. I'll just quickly talk about the shirt sponsorship. I know it's quite a boring topic, if we're being honest, but we haven't got a shirt sponsor. I think it's this one here. Yeah. So Mike Keegan in the Daily Mail, the guy that broke that we're going to launch the kit with no sponsor. Chelsea are reportedly looking for just £25 million for a shirt sponsor and will include their women's team as part of the package. I'm not really sure why that's relevant, because the women's team was sponsored by 3 last year as well. So I'm not really sure what the relevance of that is. But
I think the idea actually was this season to potentially have 2 sponsors for
was it?
the men's team and one for the women's team. I think there was a few rumours about it, but I don't think, well, clearly it's not materialising here. I think there's just not enough time at this point.
In terms of the sponsorship situation, right, because I've got some sympathy with the club on this, and then I also haven't. I think, and I've said it on Twitter, I think earlier this week, like, I think it's, I don't necessarily criticize them for the sponsorship situation, because there's been certain circumstances outside of their remit in terms of the Paramount deal that was blocked, and then they had stake good to go, but there was a fan backlash, and they took that on board and didn't go with it, and now you left yourself short of time. I kind of appreciate that. What I think is an absolute scandal is that you cannot buy the shirt before the season begins. That's really poor. You're going to have fans turning up to the first game of the season, and it's going to be no shirt for this season on like anywhere in the ground other than on the pitch. That's really poor. In terms of where do you stand with this, mate? Because steak offered 40, people weren't up for having steak, and now I'm seeing people moaning, "Oh, but steak offered us 40. Why are we taking 25?" Like it's almost like they can't win in certain situations. I mean, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, so I'm the same as you. I have a little bit of sympathy for the owners, and I also have my reservations and some criticisms on this one. So I think they were, first of all, they were unlucky to not have the Paramount deal fall through. I think we can all agree that that would have been probably perfect, and for some reason the Premier League have blocked that. Then when after they decided they maybe wanted to go for steak, they listened to the fans, which is worth listening to the fact that they actually listened to the fans when the fans said, no, we don't want this. So they've decided, to put that on hold. So having said that, then you can't, then as fans, we can't complain when we turn around and say, oh, well, you only want 25 million instead of 40 when steak were offering that, because the fans themselves said we don't want steak. So, you can't have your cake and eat it too in that regard. What has frustrated me is I think they've had a season, they've had a year since they've been in charge, the owners, to get this done, and it seems to be really last minute. I think that's been not on. Yes, stuff has fallen through, but this should have been sorted months ago. Let's be honest. Even with everything that's going on, they've been too busy sort of buying, South American kids and things like that, and it seems that they're not very good at the moment at delegating their own time. And then as well, the criticism can also come from the fact that they're doing a 25 million shirt sponsor or whatever they want to do, and you've got them at same time months ago saying, oh well, the club wasn't run like promotionally in the best way and things like that, so they before they bought it. So you've got this kind of criticism as well from the previous regime, and now actually it seems that due to either time constraints or money constraints or not being in the Champions League or whatever, they actually can't get a deal that's better than the one we already had. So at the end, there's some things on that side that didn't go their way and is unlucky. There's some stuff they did well in listening to the fans, and then there's stuff they've done poorly as well.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I mean, look, I haven't read this article, but I would presume this would potentially be a 1 year sort of stopgap solution, and then once hopefully we get back into the Champions League, then you've got more lucrative sponsors wanting to pay more money because of the exposure. But I mean, when do you see this being dealt with? Do you think this will be done before the season starts?
It has to be, doesn't it? It's crunch time now. In terms of timing wise, it has to be done soon, because otherwise, the shirts are going to launch on, what is it, the 16th of August?
16th
I think it is.
August, yeah. So we play on the 15th against Liverpool, day after that Monday.
Got a little over a month to be able to actually get, when you think about the supply chain of it all, you got to get the manufacturing side of it done. Stuff will be on standby for that, but it still takes time. We're going to need all the stores to get, opened up. Everything's got to get shipped around to warehouses and stuff to be shipped around the world. There's a lot to it. It's a big operation, and I fear they've not left themselves enough time, which seems to be just a recurring issue with this ownership.
I mean, I was under the impression that you'd be able to buy the sponsor the shirt.
Yeah, it seems not.
I'm now not so sure that's going to be the case. I think a lot of people thought that was going to be the case, but I think by not putting it to, because these are ready to go, by the way. If they were planning to sell those, they could sell these blank. Like they could have sold them start of the week when they launched this. Those are printed and ready to go. But they're obviously waiting to get a sponsor so that they hope, but by the time the season starts, they've got a sponsor, and then by Monday, obviously they can then put all the sponsor on the shirts and then sell them properly on Monday. I honestly thought that they were going to be available blank, but I don't think they are now.
I think the thing is no prospective sponsor will go for that. Potentially, having blank shirts but without their sponsorship on it, as well as the actual sponsors themselves. If they launch it sponsorless
as well,
if they launch it sponsorless, more people will buy them, right? I think that's kind of like where kind of what we all think is that if they launch sponsorless, everyone goes, "Oh, that's a clean kit. I'll buy that." And people were talking about this might be the first Chelsea shirt we'll buy in a while. And I think, but the problem is then if everyone buys one without a sponsor on it, when the sponsor comes in, no one's going to buy one with a sponsor on it, which is what the sponsor wants. So no, realistically, no sponsor would actually go for that as a plan, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a real shame because I actually really want one. I mean, to be honest, I'll probably still buy it with a sponsor anyway, but sponsorless kits just look so much better. Like there's no two ways about it. That's actually a really nice shirt. All right, you could argue a little bit of the badge looks a bit tacky and whatnot, but like that sponsorless for sure would be one of if that went to retail, that would sell. I think that could be Chelsea's best selling kit in a long time. Certainly under Nike. And it would probably do a similar sort of numbers to the one that was really popular, the one that we wore in the FA Cup against Forest a few years back. That was like a tribute to the 1970 FA Cup final. I just wore it as a one-off.
That kit.
Mate, so good.
I've been scouring the internet for years for that kit, and I've never been able to pick one up.
Mate, I've got one, but I managed to, I literally, right, I didn't get it straight away, but I managed to find it on sport in a Sports Direct. Big up to Mike Ashley. Yeah, but I managed to find one there. But mate, they're hard to come by. I think these would be really good. But as you say, I can't see a situation where they sell them sponsorless until they've got a sponsorship, and then they also sell the sponsored ones alongside the blank ones. Because let's be honest, the blank ones will sell way better than the sponsored ones would.
But like I say, no sponsors going for that realistically, are they? Especially like if the sponsored shirts and the non-sponsored shirts don't go on sale at the same time. Like if the non-sponsored ones go on first, everyone who wants one will get one.
Yeah,
and so I just don't see that working.
No, I don't either. But yeah, let's move away from the kit. Hopefully, a sponsor is revealed soon. I mean, we haven't even had an away kit launch yet either. So I don't know when that. I mean, I think people mostly know when it is, but I don't know when that's coming either. Let's move away from shirt sponsorship. We've done Cherki. Let's talk about. We'll talk about defenders quickly, and Trevoh Chalobah is popping up again in the Evening Standard, saying that Chelsea are open to selling Chalobah this summer for the right price. It's understood Chalobah is behind fellow centre-backs Silva, Fofana, Badiashile and Colwill in the pecking order. I would agree. I think we can all agree that probably is the consensus. As good as Chalobah is, he probably is at the back of that queue. Pochettino only wants 4 centre-backs in the first team squad next season. Now, this is where I'm a little bit out on Poch's thinking here. I think it's a massive gamble, considering Fofana and Badiashile have shown that in their short time at Chelsea, they can be susceptible for picking up injuries. I think you leave yourself pretty short. Would you agree, mate? Before we get into Chalobah and the logistics of all the defenders, do you think going with 4 centre-backs in a back 4 is leaving yourself short?
I personally think if you're playing 1 game a week, it's okay. But that where I think actually the concept falls down a little bit is you've got, you're going to have, as one of your 4 centre-backs, you're going to have Thiago Silva, who's most likely leaving at the end of next season anyway. So the issue is then what happens is you leave yourself short in the transfer market next summer. When we desperately need a centre back, everyone knows we need one, and people are going to be right. Okay, Chelsea need a centre back. They've got money. We'll flog ours to them for 80-90 million again. So it would be smarter, at least in a fiscal point of view, you keep Chalobah at least for this season. Then you let Thiago Silva leave at the end of next season. Then you either keep Chalobah for depth, hopefully if we're back in the Champions League, or you then sell him. Once he's had another year to develop and kick on. But I'm not sure it will go that way.
I'm not sure either. I mean, I look at Chalobah, and I do almost feel a little bit sorry for him to a certain extent, because every time he's put on a Chelsea shirt, he's been pretty good. He's had a couple of poor games here and there, but he's always reliable. He's filled in at right back and done a good job. He can obviously play defensive midfield, but I don't think that's really going to be necessary for us next season. It's just an unfortunate situation where he's got 4 centre halves ahead of him that are just better than him. And
yes, exactly. I think it's a bit unfair on Chalobah in some ways, because I think he gets a lot of stick actually, because I don't think he's anywhere near as big as anywhere near the biggest issue in the squad at the moment for sure. And I think he gets a lot of stick for actually not doing all that much wrong. Especially in there seems to be a few players in the squad who kind of get stick like that. I think Gallagher's another one where he gets a lot of stick. People really don't like Gallagher. Even though that realistically he doesn't do all that much wrong. in his time. Yeah, maybe that's debatable, for some of you in the chat and whatnot. But I don't know. It seems that people are very quick to want to push out some of our players who are on the periphery just simply because they're just not as new as some of the other ones.
I mean, ultimately, it will come down to Chalobah's decision, I think, at the end of the day, whether he wants to go or not. I think he'll have aspirations of getting into the getting into the squad for the Euros next summer, which I think he would have a good chance if he plays regularly. He's certainly one of England's best centre-backs for sure in terms of the 6 I think they take on or 5 or 6 they take on those tournaments. But you just wonder, where is his game time going to come from? Where you're not going to get much rotation playing a back 4, and he's not even the first rotation option either at the back. But then I also agree with you that if he wants to, for his career, hang around for a year and accept that he's probably not going to play too much, I'm not sure many players do want to do that. Let's just presume he does. Then Chelsea have got themselves in a good position where actually they probably don't need to go and sign a centre-back to replace Thiago Silva, because Chalobah's already there and can kind of and step into, I'm not saying he's going to step into Silva's void, but Colwill might be able to step into that void. And then Chalobah moves up the pecking order and would then have more of a chance at minutes, because otherwise you let Chalobah go. Let's say Silva leaves at the end of next season. You suddenly need to go back into the centre, into the market for a minimum one centre-back.
At least one, and if you're playing in the Champions League,
million,
if you're in the Champions League, you might need another one as well. So maybe one of them gets made up of the numbers by a youth player, who Chalobah is anyway, but or was anyway. But then you're short in the centre back market, and suddenly everyone gets to fleece you for money. So that's the thing. I think the main thing will be around Chalobah's decision personally. I think if he wants to stick around, it would really help the club in the long term, because even after next season, we could either sell him or not. But not before we get in another centre back anyway after Silva leaves. So it makes sense sort of financially to do it that way. But like you say, it'll be down to Chalobah at the end of the day. I can imagine he's imagining his options and getting game time in somewhere like Italy. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, what do you think? What do you think? What sort of price do you think Chelsea would be looking for Chalobah? Because let's be real, he's a good age at around 24. He's versatile. He's not short of years on his contract. He's contracted until 2028 as an option for another year. So he's contracted for the next 5 years, possibly 6, if the club were to take up that option. So, what do you think's a fair price for him? This might sound ridiculous, but I actually think 50 million quid is not outrageous for Trevoh Chalobah.
I think 50 is a little high. I would go 40, 45. So, similar to Gallagher, like similar to that kind of level. Both of them have a fair long time on their deals left. Both of them are academy products, so they're both homegrown as well, especially in the Prem. I know that doesn't necessarily matter for Chalobah if he's going to Italy, but it might matter for other Premier League teams. And I think 40 million is about right.
Yeah, would you accept 40 million?
Yeah, or 35 plus 5 even. I think for a fourth choice, fifth choice centre back who's kind of surplus to requirements for the upcoming season, I wouldn't mind that as a little cash injection.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I mean, for what it's worth, I would like him to stay. But sticking with centre backs, mate. What do you make of all the noise surrounding Levi Colwill at the moment? I think he's obviously on holiday. I think he's due back Monday to fly out for pre-season. I think he'll be assessed in pre-season like everyone else will be. Where do you think his head's at? Do you think because I'm seeing a lot of people saying, I don't think he wants to be at Chelsea. He doesn't seem like he's up for it. He wants to be told that he's a guaranteed starter and all this kind of nonsense. What do you make of the situation surrounding Colwill at the moment?
So Colwill's really, really talented, and we all know that. Other teams know that. Chelsea know that. Pochettino knows that. But because there is uncertainty potentially about his future. Well, I mean, first of all, it's important to look at, like Chelsea hold all the cards here. He's got 2 years left on his deal plus an option for a third, which I think is
3 years contracted still, yeah.
Yeah, I think the third one gets triggered by like appearances or minutes or something. So it's very likely he's going to stick around. Let's be honest. Despite all the pushing and poking and prodding from like Liverpool, Brighton, who are going to be in for a centre back who's as good as he is, especially if they're trying to lure him away with Champions League football or European football or whatever, or better wages, recognition, more minutes, what have you. But the thing is, because there is a little bit of uncertainty around his future, everyone is micro-analyzing every little thing that happens around him at the moment. Like people were analyzing Like, the thing he said on the pitch when they won the under-21s with
Yes.
Madueke, about coming back. He said the same about no football talk or whatever it was the other day. And people are just micro-analyzing it and, and getting out from that he doesn't want to stay. It's very clear. He's just holding his cards close to his chest until he can talk to Pochettino and figure out what he wants to do. And until that point, there's no, there is no, he does or doesn't want to stay. It doesn't matter because he's on a 3-year deal anyway. I think a lot of the people saying, he doesn't want to stay or whatever are kind of falling into this media narrative a little bit. And I'd urge you to actually look at the content of what he said and the context around it in order to actually sort of assess how you think what he's going to do. It's very clear that, to me at least, that he's holding off on saying anything's totally committal because he loses all his bargaining power for a new contract if he says, I'm definitely going to stay. So so he's obviously, in my view, he's going to wait until he speaks to Parks, sees him at pre-season, has a bit of an assessment, figures out, how is this going to go? Am I going to get played? Am I going to get minutes? Or am I just going to be fobbed off and be fourth choice centre back? If that's the case, he'll probably be off. But I think Chelsea rate him so highly that I don't think he will. I think he'll get significant minutes, but it's about convincing him of that to then hopefully sign a new contract in the summer. But even without that, we could still play him all this season and all next season, and it wouldn't matter anyway.
No, this is true. I mean, obviously, he's going to get his chance in pre-season like everyone will, and it's up to him to deliver. But, I mean, can you see him being the starting centre-back alongside what we presume is going to be Thiago Silva as one of those slots? Do you think Colwill is going to be a first-choice player from day one?
I'm not sure Thiago Silva will be a starting centre-back.
No, don't even if he's named captain?
Well, maybe if he's named captain, but I'm not necessarily sure. I think the captain situation probably does have some kind of bearing on it. But I just think as well, maybe Thiago Silva is just, with every year he gets a bit older and this kind of miracle of his age keeps going on, you kind of start to see teeny tiny little cracks around his game. And I worry if this season might be the season that his legs finally give up. And he just loses that half a yard of pace that's just enough, or, with his defending ability just loses just enough that it won't be good enough actually to start for most of the season. And I don't think he should be expected to at his age either. I think that Colwill may well be a starter, him or Badiashile alongside Fofana in a back four. I don't see any issues with that, young core for sure, but the whole team is going to be young.
I mean, do you think Colwill's better than Badiashile?
Badiashile probably, as of right now, is better in terms of seniority. He's a little bit older. He's arguably a bit calmer on the ball, although Levy is absolutely phenomenal on the ball. I would say that just on the basis of seniority, Badiashile might get to pull rank, which is really weird considering he's 21 or 21, 22 years old. But Colwill is so talented that maybe Poch sees him in preseason and goes, no, you have to start. So
yeah, I mean, a lot of it's going to be down to Colwill at the end of the day as well. I think he will absolutely get his opportunities to play in the first team and whatnot, and it's up to him to put the performance levels in to show that he deserves to stay there. I don't think this is a case of Chelsea, Pochettino not making those opportunities available to him. I'm convinced those opportunities will be available to Colwill, and then it's going to be down to him as to whether he takes his opportunities and shows that he deserves to stay in the team. But I look at Colwill's situation. I think, at 19 years of age, it's absolutely there's no rush. He's got plenty of years left on a contract at Chelsea. Even if he was not first choice this season and was the third choice, as it were, first rotation option, he was third centre back, learning from the likes of Thiago Silva and whatnot for a year. And then when Silva leaves at the end of next season, which I think we all think is going to happen, you're then in a position to step into that void, having already been there for a year, learning the ropes and knowing what it's like. So I don't see why Cole would be in such a rush to potentially need to be into the first team instantly. Yes, of course, you want to play first team football and play regularly, and he's going to have aspirations of getting into the England squad and maybe even starting for England at the Euros next summer. But I think
that's on his mind as well, because Southgate's told him if you play a lot this season and you impress, you'll play at the Euros, and I think
him and John Stones for sure.
Yeah, and so I think as well, So largely, I think it's going to be down to Pochettino and Colwill, and I'm working out between them who, like how much is he going to play, how much is he going to start, how much is does he want him to develop, how is he going to push his game on? Because at the end of the day, it seems that Colwill wants minutes, not money. From everything we've been briefed, in the media, he wants minutes, not money. So give him those minutes. This next season is going to be the best opportunity for a young centre back like him to really cut his teeth. If not now, when?
Yeah, this is very true. I mean, guys, before we move on to another young defender, people, I've not mentioned it today. 50 minutes in, haven't mentioned it once. Make sure you smash the likes, people. Get the likes up. We've got 80 of you locked in on my channel. Only 50 likes, guys. Let's get those likes up. Come on, people. Run them up. Get them to at least 60, 70 likes if we can. Just hover over that thumb button. Don't be shy. You're typing away in the chat. It's greatly appreciated. So, yeah, just hover over that thumb button. Give it a click.
It takes 2 seconds and it's free.
Exactly. And it massively helps out as well. So let's ramp these likes up on both channels. And make sure, guys, if you're not subscribed to myself or you're not subscribed to Chelsea Fan TV, make sure you subscribe to both channels. It is greatly appreciated. So please do that. Links to my channel is now in the chat. So if you're tuned in now and you're not subscribed, please click the link and click that subscribe button. It's free. It takes seconds and it massively helps me out. And do the same over on Chelsea Fan TV as well, guys. It is greatly appreciated. So please do that. Mate, we're going to talk about Ian Maatsen for a brief moment.
Good news story.
Yeah, I think. Look, I think he's had a very good loan spell at Coventry a couple of seasons ago, and then was instrumental part of the Burnley team that went up under Vincent Kompany last year. His future is a little bit up in the air. I think a lot of people are expecting Chelsea to sell him. I don't think he's got that many years left on his contract. I think if he was going to go on loan, he'd have to sign a new contract. But Felix reporting, and actually he's pretty good. What he is very good at is youth players and things like that. So Pochettino has directly told Ian Maatsen that he will get a proper chance in pre-season with game time. Chelsea's still trying to offload Cucurella. Been discussed with Juventus, who have long-standing interest. Interest also from Newcastle and Atletico. Nothing concrete yet. Maatsen and his camp have been spoken to by Chelsea and are no longer being left in the dark as they have throughout the summer. Chelsea have been listening to offers, but despite interest, no one has met the around £25 million price tag. Plan was always to go into pre-season, not with the loan group, if a sufficient offer wasn't received, but he's now been directly told by Poch that he will get a chance to impress. Now, we're quite stocked in that left-back position. Chilwell, Cucurella, Lewis Hall can also do a job there. And now you've got Ian Maatsen as well. I think it's fair that he deserves a chance in pre-season, but mate, we got too many players there. Like for Maatsen, for me to have a serious future at Chelsea, Cucurella has to be sold. I just don't see that happening.
I mean, there were options, I think, for Cucurella. I think there was Juve who were maybe interested. A couple Spanish teams were interested, even Newcastle as well. So, there are potentially options there for Cucurella to move on. I do think Maatsen should start over him, personally, if after Chilwell at least, because I just see that, he's younger. He's probably better. I think he's a lot more the kind of player Poch would like as well and would work well with him. Whereas I think Cucurella might find himself a little bit surplus to requirements in the coming season. So, I don't know. I think, again, I know a lot of people are saying Potts doesn't have that much power in terms of deciding on incomings and things like that with transfers, but actually in who he chooses to play, especially of these younger players who are coming back in, he has a lot of say and he has a lot of power in that. So it's really important that these young players can impress under him if they're going to have any kind of future here.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree on that. But it's going to be interesting because, again, people saying that we should sell Cucurella and use Maatsen. Maatsen's never played a single second of Premier League football. Like that's still a big gamble. Yes, he looks good and whatnot, but I don't think we can sit here and say that at this point in time he is better than Cucurella as a footballer. He isn't. Cucurella's not had a good season. I think Cucurella deserves another season, and I think he would actually show that he is a better player than last season suggested. Do you think? I mean, I personally feel he deserves another opportunity to impress. I think he was almost one of those that was guilty by association to Graham Potter. I think that's why a lot of fans turned against him. Yes, he wasn't amazing, but he also showed good glimpses in certain games. And I think if you spend 60 plus million pounds on a player to then bin them off after a season, I'm not sure if that's the right answer. I think Maatsen's a talented boy, but I don't think we could be saying that he's a better player than Cucurella at this point in time.
Well, it's hard, isn't it? Because there's other contexts and factors at play. Cucurella's on 175k a week. Being able to shift that out of the team would be excellent. And it really, even if Maatsen was worse in the season to come than Cucurella was last season, the fact that he's on a lot less money is probably even still makes that a positive. So there's kind of sides to it, and I don't know. I personally think we've had a lot of players who have come in from the Championship, as loans or
Reece
whatever.
James, Mount, yeah.
James Mount, Tomori, Abraham Gallagher. These are all players who've come straight into the teams from having really positive loans. In both in the Premier League and in the Championship. I think it's a case of just, again, it's like, if not now, when? Because for Maatsen, because like you say, his contract will need renewing in the next year or two. And if he isn't going to get game time, we might chance losing him to someone else. And then we're stuck with Cucurella on 175k a week. And Maatsen goes on to become the better player, overall, instead of maybe just right now. So for me, it's not really, it's kind of a no-brainer for me, but it's not easy to pull off.
It's not easy to put off at all. I mean, I'm not sure what do you think the club would deem as an acceptable offer for Cucurella? Because I think you're looking at 45 million pounds, maybe 50 for Cucurella. And I'm just not sure if anyone's gonna pay that.
I think it'd be 35 tops. They're gonna take a hit on him regardless. I think if they sell him this summer, even if they sell him next summer, partially because of his book value and partially because he's really just not impressed under at Chelsea. There is also something to be said about the fact he's had a lot of upheaval in his life in the last couple seasons. We went from Getafe to Brighton to Chelsea in 18 months, 2 years. That it's quite a lot of change, quite a lot of moving and moving your whole family up sticks and everything and changing your life, a lot. So yeah, I can see where that instability wouldn't be great for him and he needs a bit more stability in his life. At the same time, do I actually think that he's going to be a phenomenal player if he does get that stability? Do I think he's going to be better than Maatsen would be if he was afforded opportunities? No, I don't. So I think ultimately it's probably best to cut your losses personally.
Yeah, I mean, look, I hear what you're saying. I'm of a slightly different opinion on that, which is fine. But yeah, look, I just think Cucurella could still be useful at the end of the day. But again, we are well stocked in those areas. So something's going to have to change. Like Maatsen, Cucurella is one of those two is going to have to. It's going to have to.
And it would mean Hall has to move into midfield as well.
I think Lewis Hall goes on loan this season. Personally, I think that's probably what's best for his development.
I agree. I think he's done really well to really show that he can play a really good role. I think he would do really well in maybe a bottom half Prem or a top half Championship team. Maybe sending him to someone like Burnley would be really good for him. Not only filling potentially the void that them losing Maatsen leaves at left wing back, but also him being able to fill in at midfield as well.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, yeah, I think Lewis Hall probably could do with a Premier League loan. I just think he's gonna need at this stage in his career. He's done very well when he's played for Chelsea, but there's not as many minutes available to him as of course he would like, or as a young player you need to develop at the age that he's at. So I think there's definitely Premier League teams that would take him. As you say, a loan move to Burnley potentially, or again, Lewis Hall was mentioned a while back with a potential loan move to Crystal Palace, which again would be another great destination. The Championship has worked well for players going on loan from a Chelsea perspective. We've seen Maatsen do it. We've seen Mason Mount do it. We've seen Tomori do it. Reece James did it as well. I don't think a Championship loan would be a disaster if it was someone, maybe a top Championship club, maybe one of the Premier League teams that got relegated. Maybe, if Leeds were looking, for example, maybe a Leeds or or a Southampton or Leicester or whatever. I think that could work well for him. But I do think that a loan move is going to be what's best for his career. I mean, can you see any situation where he becomes part of the midfield squad?
Yeah, but that's only if I think as well. Only if Cucurella leaves, which sounds weird because Cucurella's a left back. But I think it's so that then we would retain Hall for that left wing back spot as sort of second or third choice, or at least competing with Maatsen there. He can also then potentially be in midfield as well. I think he'd have to play a bit further up the pitch though. I think he kind of has to take Mount's old role of sort of like an 8-10 kind of player, because I don't see him being able, despite, he has great physicality. I'm not sure he's kind of a player for the pivot. So I think he's got to play a little bit further up the pitch, attacking mid, maybe even left mid, just to sort of, just as where he would fit. So, in that regard, it's hard to see where he actually will get game time, because if we bring in Cherki, he's then going to be behind Nkunku and Cherki in the middle. He's going to be behind Mudryk and Sterling on the left, who are, all those players are more senior than he is. I think probably a loan would be best for him. And like you say, I think a championship loan isn't a disaster. I would personally prefer a Prem loan because he's already playing Prem football.
Yeah.
It just keeps it consistent on that basis. And that's why I think Burnley might be a good shout for him. But at the same time, I'm also cognizant we don't want to send him to if we send him to the Prem, we can't send him to a team that's going to get relegated. Because he's not going to play as well. He's not going to get as good an experience out of his loan, and it won't, and we really have the chance of squandering his development really early otherwise.
Yeah, no, I certainly hear what you're saying. It's going to be interesting. There are a lot of decisions that still need to be made, and pre-season I think is going to go a long way to answering a lot of those questions. But I suppose you could also look at it. Maybe there is room for Cucurella, Maatsen, and Chilwell, because Chilwell, touch wood, he's not going to be as injured as he's been the last few seasons. But there could possibly be a need for 3 left backs. Maybe if Chilwell's injury issues don't improve.
Does Maatsen have injury issues as well, potentially? I can't
remember. To be honest, I didn't watch enough of Burnley last season to really notice if he made Championship Team of the Year, so I don't think he would have been injured that much. But I mean, look, there could potentially be an argument that maybe we keep 3 of them. Maybe we do keep Chilwell, Cucurella, and Maatsen. I don't know. It's a tricky one. It really is a tricky one to answer. I don't really know what the best situation is, but I guess we just have to wait and see for pre-season kind of what happens on that front.
I think the best thing, I think that the thing that works out best for sort of like the squad depth and everything is probably sell Cucurella. Like if you could just do it all, and you didn't have to think about how it would be done or how difficult it would be. You'd sell Cucurella and send Hall on loan. That leaves you with Chilwell and Maatsen as the left backs or left wing backs at the club, at least for this season. And then Hall can come back at the end of next season, at the end of the season coming, and Cucurella moves on, and it makes sense.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I mean, talking of defensive midfield players, Nottingham Forest have submitted a bid for Ibrahim Sangare.
Interesting.
Remember when we were linked with him?
Yeah, everyone wanted him for a little while, didn't they?
Yeah.
I guess something happened. People, saw something in him or saw something that put them off a lot of the big teams, apparently. And great signing for Forest if they can pull it off.
If they can pull it off, absolutely. Guys, get the likes up on Chelsea Fan TV. Only 118 likes with almost 300 of you locked in. Make sure you up those likes and up the likes on my channel as well as we bring this one to a close. Guys, 60 likes. Let's try and get this to at least 70, 80 likes if we can in the next 5 minutes or so, people. What else we got going on here? Mate, last thing I wanted to discuss. Let's get this Conor Gallagher thing up before, just to round out. Reported interest from Spurs. Chelsea, it could cost up to £50 million. Pochettino's an admirer of him. I think we know what qualities he admires in Conor Gallagher. I'm not too fussed either way if he stays or if he goes. I think he can add value as a squad player, as a rotation option for the squad if needed. I'd much rather keep Gallagher than say go and spend 50 million, 60 million pounds on another midfield player. But if a decent offer of say 40, 50 million pounds comes in for Gallagher and he wants to go, then I'm also equally happy with that situation as well. What do you make of the Gallagher situation and kind of Spurs' interest and that sort of thing? Do you think Gallagher will leave?
No, I don't. I think a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest at the moment in Gallagher, and I think that's a little bit of a shows to a certain extent the kind of player he is that so many teams do want him. He's a ferocious runner, very fit, and I didn't even realize this. He had a heart surgery when he was in his teens.
Did he?
And yeah, apparently, and that's incredible considering he's basically one of the fittest players I've ever seen. When you look at him when he's running around and stuff. Technically not the best, we all know this, but I think as well he provides a few things that sort of intangible things that are useful to the squad. He's got a certain level of determination and willingness to keep going and keep pushing, and that sort of work ethic that I think we lacked a lot of last season. He was kind of one of the only players who, when everyone was terrible, he was at least showing effort. And I think that does mean a lot. Also, he does actually love the club. A lot of people are really upset potentially around losing. People have been saying a lot that if you don't want to be here, then you should leave, right? Especially in regards to someone like Colwill. Well, Gallagher does want to be here, and people still want him to leave.
Yeah.
So it's like make up your mind. Do you want him or not? At the same time, he does have limitations to his game. At the same time, I'm not entirely sure if we do play a 4-2-3-1 where he plays in Poch's system, especially if we get someone like Cherki. Is he going to play on that right hand side? Is he going to play as the 10? Maybe. Is he going to play in the pivot? He doesn't really quite fit any of those roles. Maybe on the right is where he fits the best. But I still like.
He could be an option as a rotation for a 10. But I suppose if Cherki comes in, that kind of takes that away, because he did sort of play that more advanced role at Palace.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was getting to with that. Like he has played that kind of role before, and he did well with sort of crashing the box and scoring a few goals. Sort of playing that as an attacking 8/10. But then again, you've got someone like Chukwuemeka as well, also in the mix. We've got a lot of players in a lot of certain positions. I'm not sure necessarily where he plays, despite the fact that Poch admires him. I'm sure he's still running the gay contest as we speak, but I'm just not sure where necessarily he plays. But I do like him. I think he gets a lot of unnecessary hate. Just because he is someone who is more fitness oriented than actually sort of like technical ability. And, people have their preferences on that. That's fine. But I think he gets a lot of unnecessary hate considering that. At the same time, sort of if an offer of 50 million from a team comes in for him, it'd be hard to say no, considering, his spot in the squad. So I could see it going either way. I'd say if 50 million came in, I'd say thanks for your service and see you later.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. No, because I'm not saying that Cherki's a 10. I'm saying that Cherki can play as a number 10.
And he has played as a 10, and he has played anywhere across the line behind the striker.
He's played left, right, and 10. He's not an out-and-out 10, but he absolutely can play as a 10. Look, I've got no issue with Gallagher staying, as I've been saying. I don't think it's a huge issue if he stays. Like, he's one of those players that doesn't moan about lack of game time, or not at least publicly anyway. He's happy to do his bit for the team, and I think he could be a useful squad player to have. And I think he gets a lot of unnecessary stick from a lot of people. People say that he's crap. He's not terrible. Like, could we do better than Conor Gallagher? Absolutely, but could we do worse? Absolutely, we could do.
He's what you need in a rotation option for me. Like, just someone who's got legs. Do I think he should be starting for us? No. Do I think he has a role to play? Potentially, depending on what Poch has to say. I think one of the thing is with him and Hall, at least in midfield, will operate in very similar zones. I know he's more on the right, Hall's more on the left, but they're both sort of potentially going to be in a more attacking midfield role than they were before. So I think at the very least one of those two needs to go on loan or be sold. As a result, loan for Hall, probably sell for Gallagher.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. But again, if we sell Gallagher, that's probably another midfielder that needs to come in. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all very well getting rid of these players, but that then leaves you with, let's say Gallagher goes, at this point in time, no one's come in. That leaves you with Enzo, Carney, Caicedo, and Santos if we sell Gallagher. That leaves us with 4 midfielders. Maybe
But
say,
that's arguably more for the pivot. I know
yeah,
Chukwuemeka wouldn't play in the pivot, but neither would Gallagher really. Like,
no,
going to play more up top. So I think really the need for midfield, like, we definitely need one of those midfielders who's going to play in the pivot.
yeah.
And Gallagher isn't that. We saw that with Tuchel.
No, he's absolutely. No, I agree. He's absolutely not a pivot player for sure. But I think there's still use for him in the squad. And I think if you're just talking of a squad player, then I think we're better off keeping him than spending another 50 million quid on someone to do the same job.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's questions to be had. Like, you could say, why don't you sell him for 40, 50 million, get Dybala for 10? I have no reservations about that. Dybala, like we said, is a top player. Obviously he'd be on more wages, but it's not my money, is it? So
no. Oh yeah, look, I think there's certainly options there. I think a lot more will become clear, obviously, after pre-season. But I think the general consensus is that realistically, before pre-season, guys, I don't think an awful lot of transfer news is going to happen in terms of incomings, which as fans is disappointing for us. You're always desperate for that incoming news, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think stuff might take place while we're on the tour, but I think realistically, when we come back is when we might see a bit more serious stuff ramping up. But yeah, seems like a good place to round this one out, people. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, guys, make sure on the way out you smash the likes on both streams and subscribe to both channels, guys. Links are going in the chat. Again, I've put my channel in the chat and I'll put Chelsea Fan TV in the chat as well. If you could subscribe, it really, really helps out. It takes seconds, it's free, and it helps out more than you could imagine. So please do that on the way out. Please smash the likes on the way out. Thanks for tuning in. As always, guys, great to have you tuning in, interacting in the chat. It's always a pleasure. Ollie, thanks for your time as always, mate. If people want to check out your stuff on the screen name there, make sure you check out Ollie on Twitter. Make sure you check out his podcast as well. Both links in the description. So go and have a look at those two things. Guys, I'll be back tomorrow with another daily transfer update. Let's hope for some good incoming news. We can always hope. But as I said, guys, smash the likes on the way out. Subscribe to both channels if you haven't done so already. And I'll catch you again tomorrow with another transfer update, guys.